There you go. Well, today's Monday, January 14th. It's 9 a.m., 9:01 now. We're in the city chambers. I call this special meeting to order. If you have a public comment card, please fill out one of these, and you'll get them from right up there, and you'll hand those to the officer. If you have your cell phones, please put them on vibrate or turn them off. And sitting with us today, we have Ms. Hale, our recording secretary. Ms. Katie Pito is walking in, our city clerk. We have Commissioner Jill Luke. And the new deputy city clerk is walking in. I'm so sorry. What was your name again?
Ms. Taylor.
Heather Taylor. I did know that. I apologize. You threw me off there. We have Commissioner Jill Luke, Vice Mayor Debbie McDowell, myself, Mayor Hanks, Commissioner Emmerich. We have City Attorney Ms. Slayton, City Manager Peter Lear. We have our Chief in the back, Garrison, Deputy Chief Morales, and looks like Fire's playing hooky. So we're good. I'm sure he'll be here soon. Let us take a moment for a quick prayer, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance led by City Attorney. Father, we thank you for this time that we get to come together. Lord, we ask that you bless us, give us wisdom and knowledge as we continue forward. We ask, God, that you give us unity here today for our community. We love you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. If I could, please, can I get a approval of the agenda?
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor McDowell, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Can we take the vote, please?
It was 4-0, Mayor, sorry.
Okay, so that was passed 4-0 with Commissioner Carasone is not here at the moment. Okay, we're going to move on to public comment. I have a public comment card by Timothy, and I'm sorry I can't pronounce the last name. Doyle. Okay, thank you. Timothy Doyle, please. 3 minutes.
I was here the other day and you took my phone number and said you were going to call me, if you remember. No one's called me yet. So when I came here today, I had some jam with me. The police officers came up to me and made me leave the room and take the jam with me. I would like to inform all of you, when I came in this room, there was no signs out front saying I couldn't bring anything in this room. Usually when you go in the courtroom, you're right. There's something that says you can't bring in liquids, you can't bring... There's nothing at the door. Just so you know that. The reason why I bought the jam is I have several issues with this city, okay? First off, I feel the homeowner has no rights in this town. I have a United States passport. I'm a citizen, right here. It doesn't say Northport on it, because a passport doesn't say where you live. It says where you were born. So it doesn't matter. But I'm a United States citizen, and I should be protected under the law, just like we just said here. You have a permitting department that gives out permits and then allows people to build on other people's property. You tell me that's my problem. If the city can make money off of issuing a permit and I have to hire a lawyer to get something done about it, I don't need that government. I don't need that permitting department. The police has come to my house over this. I never finished what I was saying. 3 minutes is not going to finish this. Now, your lawyer over there is going to tell you not to talk to me because they'll be afraid of a lawsuit. This is about principle. I don't care about money. You already stolen everything you could steal from me. You put me in jail, stole my clothes. They took my clothes away for 2 days. Put me in a Looney Tune. Because I dare say I'd rather be dead than in jail for a cop that made up a crime on me. This license plate says live free or die. You stole my clothes over that. Live free or die. I guess 1.6 million people in the United States should be in your Looney Tunes because they dare tell a cop, no, I didn't beat up that pregnant woman. That's what you charged me with. Battery of a pregnant woman. That never happened. Can you think of a more heinous crime except for rape? Think about that. They put a gun to my head that night. Do you want me to demonstrate how it happened? I'm asking you. I can demonstrate it if you want. So 3 minutes isn't going to cut this. I'll be back on Thursday night, every night, until you guys call me and we come to some resolution. And it has nothing to do with money. That's all I have to say. If you have anything to say to me, I'll be more than glad to answer any questions, and I'll be back on Thursday, unless I get a phone call.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Is that it? I'll be back.
Mr. Lear, did we reach out to him?
Not yet. Our police department was gathering some background information, so I'd call him in a more informed matter,
Okay.
but we will call him before Thursday.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? We have any other public comments?
No, for general public comment, it all has to do with the water.
Okay. So we're going to move on to general business. Discussion on utilities neighborhood expansion project. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ongoing project that has had multiple neighborhoods that we did a survey on. I'm going to introduce our utilities department to go over their presentation rather than go into a whole lot of detail that they can repeat for you. So with that, I'll call up Rick Newkirk, our utilities director, to start the presentation.
Good morning. For the record, Rick Newkirk, your utility director. All right, we are here today to start the first of hopefully many, many meetings regarding water and sewer expansion into the neighborhoods. Remember, this is just the first step in trying to move forward. So with that, we're here to get your direction on how to proceed, discuss a particular area, discuss different options, and discuss financing. The particular area that we've selected here is because when Lamarck Elementary School was built, the utility department paid to have the lift station oversized, the water main oversized, and the force main oversized to be able to accommodate these other areas. This would be a huge savings for this project. Also, based on our survey, it was rated number 10 of 63 neighborhoods. So at some point, we need to start before septic tanks take over the environment. Eventually, they will. So it's important for the city to start somewhere and at some point, whether it's now or later. And it's not going to get any cheaper. I want to say two important things. Number one, if it's not mandatory hookup, we don't recommend that. And number two, that we continue the surtax funding. So if we don't agree on those 2 points, there's really no sense going any further. So we'd like to go through the presentation before questions are asked, if that's okay. So we will start the presentation now, and with me today I've got Jennifer Fairs, Jennifer DeRosa, Mike Acosta, Anna Duffy, Michelle Tipp. So wouldn't it be nice to say that this current commission started a way to protect our environment? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Fairs, for the record. I am the utilities engineer with the city. I'm going to go through the presentation. First, I wanted to say thank you for taking the time to listen and to provide your input, and everyone else that's here to provide your input. It's greatly appreciated. I'm going to start things off by going through the who, what, where, when, why, and how. I'm going to give you a little brief overview first, and then the whole presentation will go into detail on each of those elements. So who's affected by this? The entire city is affected by the environmental impacts of a concentration of septic tanks. What are we looking to do? we're looking to replace septic and well with city water and wastewater service within the urban service boundary area and provide service availability to undeveloped lots. Where a portion of the Madagascar Zone 28.1 is an area that we looked at and we are selecting preliminarily for expansion. When we're looking to design with fiscal year 18-19 and 19-20 dollars and then construct immediately after. Why? A concentration of septic tanks can cause contamination of surface and groundwater resources, leading to public health and pollution problems. How? We're going to utilize surtax dollars to finance neighborhood wastewater and water expansion. Who? All of the current and future residents of the City of Northport and the downstream regional partners are impacted by surface water and groundwater quality. Environmental impacts of septic tanks for small 18 by 125 lots cause contamination of surface water and groundwater resources, which impacts all types of animal, human, plant, and aquatic life. Other municipalities such as Cape Coral, Sarasota County, Charlotte County, Port St. Lucie, and Weeki Wachee have already undertaken similar endeavors and found success. What? The project purpose. The project's purpose is to provide water and wastewater service to residents throughout the city in a methodical and economical manner to maximize costs and maximize efficiency and minimize costs. Where? The location that we looked at, well, actually, Wade Trim had done a study in 2014 on the neighborhoods that would be best suited for expansion. From that report, the Madagascar Zone 28.1 was ranked 10 out of 63 on the priority list of neighborhoods best suited for expansion. This area, as Rick had already said, was desirable because of the existing utilities in the proximity. There's an existing lift station at Lamarck Elementary that's already been oversized to accommodate the additional lots, and there's already water service on the north and the west side. There are 223 parcels in this area, and then 88 of them are improved with people on them, and 135 are vacant. So the way this works is after this phase is done, there will be future phases based on funding. This is a map from that Wade Trim report that shows the priority neighborhoods. The black is the area of Madagascar Zone 28.1 that we're looking to improve. Here's an enlargement of the previous map showing Sardinia on the north and the existing lift station. You probably can't see it, but it's over in the corner here. And an existing water main going along Sardinia. Also along Salford, on the west side, there's existing water and force main. This map shows the map of the entire city. The green portion is the number of parcels with centralized city sewer right now. There are 11,158 parcels that have central sewer right now. The red portion, which is quite alarming, is the potential number of septic tanks, which that number is 44,654. Of that number, 16,325 are occupied at this time. When are we looking to do this? Well, as Rick said, now. We have funding from last fiscal year and this fiscal year for the design, and then anticipate construction to begin immediately after that. The surtax would provide the funding for the project as follows. I've showed on this table here the 10-year, what's available from the surtax to fund this project, and there's close to a little bit over $13.2 million. In order to do the 223 lots that we're talking about, it would probably cost close to $4 million with the design and the construction. Why? Well, if we don't start now, we're going to have problems in the future. Septic tank, drain field runoff are a major contributor to nitrogen and phosphorus pollution that can result in blue-green algae blooms. Blue-green algae is toxic for both animals, humans, and inhibits photosynthesis and negatively impacts the ecosystem. It adds toxins to water, which reduces the water supply for humans and animals. Septic tanks can also lead to soil contamination as well as foul odors caused by poor maintenance of the systems. Contrary to popular belief, septic tanks are not free. They require maintenance and replacement over time as well. Allowing future septic tanks also does not support the city's decision to be sustainable, environmentally conscious, or the strategic plan to create a safe and healthy environment for residents and visitors. I was doing a little research over the weekend, and the cost to replace a septic tank could range anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. Just an interesting side note. How? Well, there's two alternatives for the wastewater. Without getting into too much of the weeds of engineering, there's gravity sewer, which the currently city has, and vacuum sewer, which is not found in the city right now, but it is found in our neighbors like Charlotte County and Sarasota County. So what I'm proposing is we will put an RFP together and have an engineering firm be tasked with deciding between gravity or vacuum sewer. I'm just going to touch on a few of the highlights of each of the ones for those of you not maybe familiar with the vacuum sewer. But the gravity sewer system, like I said, is what the city currently has. And it's a system of non-pressurized pipe, which uses the difference in pipe elevation between 2 points to move the sewage through the pipe network. Then it takes it to a lift station, and then from the lift station, it ultimately gets to the wastewater plant. It's interesting to note, too, that the gravity system is usually much deeper than a vacuum system, which I'm about to talk about. Generally, when you construct a gravity system, you do it down the center line of the road, so there's a need to reconstruct the road when you do that. And also, a negative of that is the inflow and infiltration over time. Vacuum sewer, on the other hand, uses a differential pressure between atmospheric and a partial vacuum that's maintained in the line through the pumps. The wastewater is then transported from the vacuum station into a lift station, which we could use the existing one that's there, and ultimately to the wastewater plant. Oftentimes, depending on the number of lots, it's less expensive than gravity, and it eliminates the need to reconstruct the road because you're constructing it in the right of way, and it's a lot less deep than that. This system is also free of exfiltration and infiltration because it's like I said, it's a vacuum network of pipes. So if you were to accidentally get a small leak in it, things wouldn't escape out like you would think they would because it's a negative pressure. Also, shallow trenching, like I said, to install it. There's also no sedimentation due to self-cleaning, high velocities, and there's no odors because it is a closed system. I'm going to touch on the cost, and then Jennifer DeRogers is going to elaborate more if there's questions at the end on this section. But the construction cost and the customer cost are two separate costs that I'm going to talk about. The construction cost is including mobilization, pipes, the fittings, the fire hydrants, lift station, road restoration, and other items that are normal as part of construction. There's also the engineering fee. So that little table shows the breakdown between water, wastewater, and the total cost per lot for the Madagascar Zone 28.1 area. We're looking at about $5,300 for the construction cost, $10,500 if we use gravity, and a total estimated cost of $15,800, which would be funded by surtax dollars. Now to the customer fees. These are, like I said, these are different than the construction costs. I've broken it down between wastewater and water. The wastewater costs include the plant capacity fees, the line extension fee, to demolish or abandon the existing septic tank, and the permitting. And that permitting would be to the Department of Health. So that would total $13,300. And again, these are just estimates. Over on the water side, we have plant capacity fees for $1,890, a line extension fee of $3,500, meter connection of $1,150, lead recording fee of $39, to abandon a well, roughly $500, or a well could be repurposed and used for irrigation, just a side note. To install a backflow preventer, about $300, and permitting, $125 again, that would be Health Department. So we're looking at, for total water and wastewater customer fees, about $20,804. The line extension fee for both the water and the wastewater, if you total those together, you get $13,500. That is the only item that can be recouped as a portion of the construction cost of $15,800 that I already talked about. The line extension fee and the capacity fees could also be something that would be paid over time by the customers. At this point, I'd like to make a recommendation that the Commission have consensus to select the area of Madagascar Zone 28.1, which is the 223 lots, which I said before, 88 are occupied and 135 are not. This would be the first phase of a multi-phase expansion program. So the next step in that would be for utilities to issue an RFP for the design engineering services and design starting this year, using last year's fiscal year funding that was already allocated and this year's. And again, construct immediately after. We will then present the contract for the design engineering services to the City Commission for approval. Then, once it's all designed and everything, we will then issue an RFB, request for bid, and have contractors bid on it. And then once a contractor is selected, we will bring that back to the Commission for approval again. Just in summary, we would, like Rick said at the beginning, we'd like to make this for both water and sewer, and it would be a mandatory connection within 365 days in accordance with state statute. I'll now have Mike Acosta come up and talk a little bit more about the environmental impacts.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, Mike Acosta, Utility Engineering Manager. Last summer, before the events of the blue-green algae and red tide that we had at a workshop, I briefly talked about the density of septic tanks in the city, if not now, certainly in the future. And that slide number 8, if we could go back to it, kind of illustrates it pretty well on where it's headed if we don't extend water and sewer in those areas. Northport's unique. Not sort of unique. It's certainly compatible with what General Development did in platting all the lots, so you don't have big chunks of land that a developer is going to come in and put in infrastructure and connect to city essential water and sewer utilities. So all those lots could develop individually. If there's not water and wastewater there, they're going to be unwell and septic. Just kind of the way it is. And there's not a really good way to fix it. The environmental side is pretty straightforward. I talked about it last summer, that the way that a septic tank works, the septic tank kind of takes care of most of the organic carbon load, if you will. I may be technical here, and if you want me to put it in more layman's terms, I'm happy to do that. The nitrogen and the phosphorus kind of flow through the septic tank. They don't go, there's no treatment in the septic tank for nitrogen and phosphorus. The soil converts the ammonia that comes through that septic tank into nitrate, and then ultimately bacteria or other mechanisms take that nitrate and take the oxygen molecule off of the nitrate and turn it into nitrogen gas. It's really what we do at the wastewater treatment plant in large measure. We just obviously have it more condensed. The soil has a carrying capacity. At some point, you can't put more wastewater and expect it to do its thing. So the nitrates and the ammonia is going to flow right through into the groundwater table, which ultimately, the way that Northport is constructed, is cut through in all the canals. They're intersecting that surface water table. Those nitrates eventually wind up and they'll be a food source for any plant. Blue-green algae is a plant. So eventually, I'm not saying it's going to happen next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We don't know what that tipping point is. You'll know when it happens. And those are the negative consequences in the long term of the density on that page on sheet 8 of the environmental side. I don't want to really kind of get into red tide because we don't have a direct connection. Red tide is a saltwater organism, and we would have to connect the dots, and Moat isn't connecting the dots. Those guys are way smarter than me as it relates to that kind of stuff. So I know that the nitrogen load that may hit the Caloosahatchee down there may affect red tide, but the organism has to be close by enough to to get that food source. Happy to answer any questions on that front. It's relatively uncomplicated. It's just the nitrogen cycle that we do at the wastewater treatment plant on that side, and that's really the biggest concern. The nitrates, phosphates are a concern, but generally Florida soils, we know what we do in the middle of the state, right? We mine phosphate. So most Florida waters have enough phosphate that it's not the limiting nutrient to get algal blooms. It's nitrogen in general. So. Questions on that front?
You all ready? Vice Mayor?
End of the presentation.
I don't know if he's finished with the presentation.
We're good? We're done on our end.
Vice Mayor?
All right. Where to begin? I think the first thing is to thank staff for their time and efforts to put this presentation together. I'm glad the citizens came out to hear about it. It's an idea that my understanding is we're going to be voting on to either continue forward or to nix it right in the bud right now. So if you go to the slide page 12 and 13. So the estimated cost of construction is this $15,800, and that's per parcel, correct?
Correct.
So we're looking at about $3.5 million for construction.
Correct.
Okay. And that is paid with surtax.
Correct.
So if we go to slide 13, it's broken down what the customer is going to pay, $13,300 for the wastewater and $7,500 for the city water. And that is $20,800 each customer. Is that in addition to the 3.5 for surtax, or is the 3.5 part of this total 4.6 project?
Okay. Sure. There's two separate costs, but Jen will get into more detail on that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jennifer Durocher, your Assistant Utilities Director. Excuse me. So on slide 13, where it talks about the line extension fee, that is the only cost that will offset the construction cost of the project.
Okay.
Okay. The cost is approximately $3.54 million for the project. And the way that this line extension fee is designed in our ordinance is as we collect it from the customers, the money on an annual basis goes back to the source that it came from. So it is not actually paying for 100% of the cost, because as you heard before, it was roughly 15,000. This is only 13,500, so it's not going to cover the entire cost of doing the project, but the money that comes back as we collect it from the customers will go to reimburse the surtax funding if that is where the money came from to do the project.
Okay. Can you please put slide 13 up on the screen so everybody can see it, if that's
It's up
possible?
here, so there we go.
Thank you. Okay, so what I heard is the line extension fee for the wastewater, the $10,000.
Correct.
And the line extension fee, the $3,500.
Yes.
Will be paid by the customer, but that total $13,500 would then be put back into surtax.
That is the way the ordinance is written for the water side. The wastewater amount has not been determined yet, but there is a line in the ordinance where the wastewater amount would be put in, and I assume it would run in the same manner, where the money, as it comes to the utilities department, would then be reimbursed back to the original funding source.
So if the $10,000 for wastewater is the amount, we're just using hypotheticals
Yes.
now, obviously, that $10,000 would also go back to surtax?
Yes, ma'am.
Paid for by the customer and then go back to surtax?
Correct. So the idea was that it would be like a revolving kind of fund, so that it would sort of kind of fund itself to some degree.
Okay, so $13,500. Where's the other $2,300 in the construction costs on line 12? What is?
On slide 12?
On slide 12, sorry.
Well, again, it is not an assessment, so it is not intended to fully recover the cost of the project. So there is a bit of a offsetting that you, as you will, from surtax to help from an environmental perspective, I guess. You know,
So
you have to pick a number. So.
Gotcha. Slide 13, the only two things that will go back to surtax is the $13,500, give or take.
Yes, ma'am.
Paid for by the customer to go back to surtax.
Correct.
Gotcha. The other costs in here is, so the total project, we'll call it $20,800. Is that all going to be able to be financed in some form or manner for the citizens through the city?
So what
All of it?
Okay, so what the city has done in the past is we have offered to finance, so to speak, for the customers, all the plant capacity fees and the line extension fees. Those two amounts, which are the largest amounts, have been, essentially financed through the utilities department in the past. This is the thing where they could pick up to 100 years if they wanted to. I mean, our intention would be, going forward, to ask for some kind of cap on that, so it's not 100 years. Maybe, we were 30 or so at the max, something like that. But the other fees would be customer fees that they would have to pay for, at the time, like the backflow, the meter connection, the lien recording fee, the demoing of the septic tank and all that. That would be there. They'd have to come up with that on their own. And again, if they don't finance it, then they wouldn't have the lien recording fee either, so.
Okay. So these fees are only, to my understanding, is only to run the lines in front of the house. How are they going to get from the house to those lines? Is that incorporated in here, or is that a totally separate charge?
I thought
Those are, that's what I was saying.
that include, so this abandon the well, and then,
The line extension includes that.
no, this would be on the property itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Question was,
So
how
let's
would
say the
house
septic,
connect?
okay, so currently my house runs to my septic. So to take it, instead of having a septic system, now I have to have a pipe that goes from my house to the city lines. Where are those costs?
This does not include that cost. No. Yeah, so they would have to have that on there
That would
as
be a
well.
plumber that would estimate that.
So a plumber would have to come out and do that? Any ideas of those costs?
When we had looked at those fees before, I believe it was 1,000 to 1,200, if I remember correctly, the last estimates.
Rick Newkirk, once again. Commission, those numbers, it's somewhere around between 1,000, 1,500 to 2,000, depending on what you actually have in the front yard. If you've got some large pine trees in the front yard, because remember, this has got to run gravity. So you've got to get it on a pitch, it rolls downhill, so you got to get it on a pitch. And if you got to work around it, if there possibly is a driveway in the way, or there's other different obstacles. So every one of them is probably a different case scenario depending on the proximity of a sidewalk, a driveway, trees, and your landscaping.
Okay, so that was for the septic. What about the water lines? Because right now, it goes from my well to my house. So now it would have to bypass the well and then go from the house to the city water lines. How much is that going to cost or is that included, or do we have to hire a plumber for that?
That is not included in these numbers, but that is an extra. What we've done in the past pilot area, we went and located where the wells were located on that property. So we made sure that water service was placed in close proximity to the existing well, so it wouldn't have to run all different angles to get to the city's portion of it. We went to every house and examined where that existing well was to make it the shortest run as possible.
And do you know how much that cost would be to run the water lines?
Once again, it would probably be about the same scenario, but I can give you just
Rough idea.
a rough idea, high end $1,000.
All right. Thank you for clarifying slide 13 and 12. So we did you guys mentioned the pilot program, and city manager, I sent this email, I didn't get a response. Can you kind of give us an update on those numbers of the pilot program? How many, what was the final cost? How many parcels and hookups?
I've got it. There were 522 parcels, and sorry, I didn't get this to you. It came in amongst a ton right before this.
522 total parcels?
Yep, 230 of them are residences. To date, 97 have connected. And the project cost was a little over $2 million.
The final cost of the project?
Yep.
$2 million?
And that was for water only.
Water only. That was my next question. Do you know if financing was available for that pilot program?
Yes, it was. There was financing, and on that one, that's why the comment was made about limiting the length of time, because when that ordinance was passed, there was no limit, so somebody could come in and literally pay you $1 a month if they wanted to.
Can that be changed?
Well, we would prefer that change, yes, that it not be an unlimited
No.
payback period.
We can't go back and change that.
No.
Okay. So the 2014 water analysis survey that you guys used for this determination, it was only water analysis. I did not see anything mentioned about sewer except for the question about sewer, but I'm wondering, was there a separate sewer analysis conducted?
No, ma'am, there was not. Initially, the 2013 theory, I guess, was that if people wanted, water, that they would be more likely to connect. The one that we did, a pilot program that we chose, they had the highest propensity to want to connect. And as you can see by the numbers, it didn't really pan out that way. And unfortunately, with the environmental issues that we've been having, I realize it was a decision that was made back then to concentrate on water only, but our real focus and concern really is the septic issue. So that's...
Great segue to my next question. Septic is environmentally unfriendly, but lately in the news, maybe it's because I'm just paying a little bit more attention to the subject, I have been seeing almost nightly sewage spills, sewage breaches, sewage breaks. To me, that is millions of gallons of water as opposed to a septic system failure. Has anybody explored that? I know the city of Northport, I don't think has had any breaches.
I think that the two that I have seen in the news lately were the one at the city of Sarasota where their incoming force main failed and they had 800,000 or 900,000 gallons of wastewater spill, some of which reached Sarasota Bay. And the city of Bradenton had a spill from some clogging that was a result of the flushable wipes. They might be flushable, but they don't break apart like toilet paper. So while I have the podium, there's only three things that we flush: pee, poop, and paper. Don't flush those flushable wipes. They make these giant clogs up there. So back off of the soapbox for a minute and back to the reality. At the end of the day, there's always we have a mechanical system that conveys wastewater from a house to the treatment plant. There's going to be failures in there. Compared to an ongoing nitrogen source forevermore, you're talking not infinitesimal. There are millions and billions of gallons that are transmitted through the infrastructure of the state of Florida on a daily basis to the treatment plants. And so, failures are going to happen, yes, but that's a one-time point source versus an ongoing source of nitrogen and phosphorus forevermore. So that's really kind of a no-brainer in my mind on what we do with that.
So my last question, Mayor, and then I'll yield the floor, and I'm sure I'll have a few others.
I was about to ask if I could move around a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the septics and the possibility of them being not maintained correctly, is there a way that possibly the city of Northport, in conjunction with Department of Health, can implement and institute a septic inspection type system?
Two things. One, you said that septics were environmentally unfriendly. Wouldn't quite go that far.
Oh,
I mean, they are, a septic tank is designed and works fine on a large piece of land. When you have 44,000 or 60,000 lots like the city of Northport, and you're going to put them on 80 by 125 lots, that's where they become a problem. If you live on 5 acres and you have your family of 2, 3, or 4, I think you're fine with a septic tank. But that's really not what we're talking about here. Can you implement a program? Sure. At the end of the day, the septic tank is working perfectly, and it's still up to the soil to remove the nitrogen part of it. The septic tank does nothing to convert that nitrate or that ammonia that comes into it into nitrate and ultimately nitrogen gas. The plants ultimately do that, and i.e. the soil that's in there. They convert it. The bacteria in the soil, at some point, you can't put any more water through there and make that happen. It just flows right through the system, if you will. So you could, and Charlotte does have that program. But they were seeing rising nitrate levels in their canals, and obviously they have Charlotte Harbor to take care of. So they started down that path a couple of years ago, and they actually are getting close to finishing the first phase of their project, 1,500 or so system units that they're connecting.
Okay, so just a follow-up, I'm wondering, when you're talking about Charlotte County, are you talking about them implementing a septic inspection program? Or are you talking about them going from septic to sewer program? Because everybody's aware of how well that's going in Charlotte County.
Both. They have a septic inspection program.
Okay.
And they generally go out there and make sure that your septic tank hasn't collapsed, the roof, the lid hasn't collapsed, those kinds of things. If you have the aerobic type septic tanks, the health department already inspects those on an annual basis. I don't know if you're familiar with, in essence, they're miniature wastewater treatment plants that's run by the homeowner. So,
Okay.
yeah, the aerobic systems,
Aerobic? Like-
aerobic, yeah. They're close to waterways. It's an aerobic, a septic tank, by its definition, works without oxygen. That's why it's buried in the ground, and there's really no oxygen that the bacteria use. So you're using bacteria to convert the carbon source that don't use oxygen for respiration. They're anaerobic bacteria. There's 2 different kinds of bacteria. Anaerobic, don't use oxygen to respirate, and aerobic that do use oxygen. Our wastewater treatment plant, that big tank that you see bubbling, those are aerobic bacteria in there. That's why we're giving them that air. We're providing oxygen, so we're in essence making their life really good.
Gotcha.
So they do their thing.
They have the good bugs in it.
That's those, exactly.
Thank you,
exactly.
Mayor. That's it for me for now.
Mr. Luke, 10, 12 minutes or so, and then we'll come back around.
I love the topic that we're on because science is giving us a lot more. I have a friend who is a consultant and engineer, and actually he spoke with city manager also. The program that you talked about, I believe, is what was instituted in 2015 around the estuaries and that, trying to keep the nitrogen back. They have discovered another way to treat the septic tank to hold this back, and it is through those microbes because that is what breaks it down, and it's as simple as wood chips. Are you familiar with the program and what that is?
I'm familiar with wood chips to remove, in particular, odors from exhausts of lift stations and those kinds of things. I'm not familiar with wood chips as it relates to nitrogen removal, no.
I would love, in fact, this consultant is getting an appointment with the director of this department so that he can share. This group actually wants Northport to be a test for this system. It takes away just about 100% of the nitrogen from going out. I mean, this is cutting edge. They've been studying it for about 10 years, but this is another way to take care of it. What Commissioner McDowell brought up, testing these septic tanks, to me is a must. I mean, this area that we're looking at isn't an older section. It is relatively new, and depending upon what type of septic was put in, some of these people may have put a septic in only 3 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, and this system still has 12 years, and they already paid their money for this system, and now we're going to tell them all that money that you paid has to be undone, and you have to pay $20,000 more. I can't do that without you honestly looking them in the face and saying your septic tank is failing and you're hurting the environment. To me, there's another way of doing it with the wood chips. When it does come to that point, or protection, it can even be instituted in the new septic tanks in order to keep these things from occurring. So we have a knee-jerk reaction going on with the algae blooms. To what I have seen, probably the nutrient issue, the septic tanks, you know, except for around the estuaries and stuff, because that does affect them more, it's probably only about 10% of the problem that we have. I am extremely proud of our city. We had 0 of those spills, those things, 0 in our city, where I believe Bradenton and Sarasota were 73 or 63, 78. I mean, huge spillage. In our city had none, because we have the future ahead of us, and we take care of our pipes and stuff so that they don't break. So I guess to summarize how I feel, I don't want to do a knee-jerk reaction. I want to look at other opportunities to handle these situations. Personally, I would rather see the money being spent to running more lines to our commercial areas, so that, I mean, to entice to be more business friendly for the commercial to come, so we can balance the resident versus commercial balance to our taxing system of property taxes. I think it would enhance our community, you know, overall. So I think I would rather see the money put there rather than put to a resident area, forcing them to do so. I don't have a problem laying the pipe and allowing them to hook up like the project or the pilot program was, but to the design that we set that program to in the past, we fail in our objective. But I think we have to look at it as doing the right thing for the citizens while you're trying to do the right thing for Earth too. So I think I will leave it there. I will gladly have further conversation with anybody who wants to speak with me in regards to some of these other opportunities. I do know the consultant will speak with this department, but I'm just going to stop right there, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Emmerich?
Yes. Let's see, I'm on number 9, and we're talking about the funding portions of it and stuff like that. we're looking at doing designs, plans, and everything between 18 and 19, and it said anticipated construction was 2021, 21, 22. In this area, the question I'm getting to is, would all this be done by 2022, or is that the start of the construction, and how long would that take to implement this area being complete?
That would be the end.
That would be the end,
construction.
so over the next few years is
Yes.
what we're talking. On another slide, I believe, I don't know if it was on this one or not, but they had 365 days to conform to the pipe going in. So once it's in and once it's available, that is when their charges would begin for the billing cycle for utilities, because they would not have water or sewer prior to that. So is that what I'm understanding?
Correct. As soon as the project is accepted and part of our system, they could connect if they wanted to on day one. But they would not be required to connect until we provide them notice that it's available, that from that point, they have 365 days per state statute and per our code as well on the sewer side. So it would be 365 days from the day they are given notice, and that would not happen until the project was 100% complete.
And your other question, no, they would not receive a utility bill until they connected.
Thank you.
Correct. Just wanted to put that up.
Me too, I just wanted, because I didn't hear the answer to that for you, so I want to make sure you knew that.
I'd piggyback off that, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
What happens if day 366 comes, 370, 600 days later? What is the consequences of not hooking up after that 1 year period?
So we do have some people actually in the Floribama area, for instance, that still have not connected on the sewer side. And so once they have met that 365 days of notice that we gave to them, we then start charging them for base on the sewer side. And so they get a bill just like everybody else. They're not charged for consumption on the sewer side, but they are charged for base, so they're paying their fair share of the system. There is probably a little bit of a loophole somewhere in the code because we can't exactly force them to connect. It's kind of a code enforcement issue, but we do start charging them from a billing perspective.
So all they would do is get a bill for $75 a month?
Yes.
Approximately, whatever the amount is?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yes.
geez, what's the point of doing this?
What's the point of doing this?
Yeah, if they don't hook up.
Most
then
people do connect. It's just there's a bit of a loophole, and I don't know if Mr. Acosta has more to add to that.
In many communities where they do that, what they do is what Cape Coral did initially, because I lived there in the early 90s, and when they were beginning the dual water system, is if you didn't connect up within the allotted time, that was okay. They just started billing you not only the base facility charge, but also the associated payback period. So if it was whatever it was, 20 years at $20 a month or $100 a month, whatever that was, you paid both of those, not just the $50 or whatever, $75 that the base facility charges. You were paying back the system either way, whether you were connected or not. So what you were saving is only the consumption side of it, if you didn't connect.
Gotcha. Thank you, Commissioner Emmerich. I'm sorry to hijack
that's all
that.
right.
I wanted
So-
to get clarification.
So in the pilot program, it was voluntary. You're requesting that it be mandatory. So in the voluntary status of the residential, was new construction made mandatory?
Yes, all new construction is mandatory, and the reason why it's actually written in the code that Commission elected to make this particular area non-mandatory, because we do have it in our code and in our ULDC that if water or wastewater is available to you, you will connect. But this particular pilot project, it was written into the ordinance that Commission could elect to make it non-mandatory for this particular area. So our code basically requires mandatory connection regardless. So yes, for new construction, yes, it would be mandatory.
So in the pilot program, the individuals that did not hook up, are they receiving that bill that you just stated?
No, sir, they are
So
not.
they would receive no bill if it
No
was
bill.
voluntary?
Correct.
Now, you had mentioned, I think this is probably Rick, I don't know, but the difference between gravity and vacuum. being a difference, you know, in cost factors, and also with the installation of it, because we just redid a lot of roads around here, and we sure don't want to be ripping up roads. I mean, that's just not right. What would the savings be to the homeowner if it was done in a vacuum style compared to the gravity style? Because we wouldn't be looking at 20,000, would we be looking at like 18 maybe? What type of difference is
It's
there?
about $2,500 less for the vacuum system per lot. But that's a construction cost.
100?
2,500.
Okay.
And the vacuum system's a little more expandable because you can put, I think, 1,200 homes on a vacuum station.
If, and I'm not saying it is, if this was to go through the way that you have suggested it, and they have 365 days to comply at the end of it, we're only talking about 4 years from now for these homeowners here that are sitting here. You're talking about them being put on a finance plan or paying for it out of their own pockets. But when we were going over these other costs and everything, once they get that 365 days notice to connect, how much out of pocket are we talking for these citizens that are gonna have to come up with getting this plumber to do this, that, and the other? Because the numbers I was hearing, it's almost $5,000 if I was adding it up correctly. And that comes out of the homeowner's pocket for the initial installation of these lines. Am I correct on that, to assume that?
Right, and you know, again, Mr. Newkirk provided some estimates, but they are estimates. When we did the pilot project, we had recommended that maybe, you know, a whole street get together and work with a plumber to try to get, you know, some
A better deal.
share of, right, exactly. So that would be something we would recommend to them as well. So again, they would have to come up with basically most of the costs on the slide, 13, sorry, you know, for the upfront costs, and they would have to come up with the costs to convert their system over for their particular property.
Correct. Now, I can understand that's all included in the new construction, because they would be doing one or the other. They'd either be doing septic or sewer, so the costs are about the same. So it's more beneficial for them to be with new construction hooking up to this system. But when you have residents out here on fixed incomes, and they just may not have the means of savings, some may, some aren't. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but I'm trying to look at the common Joe out there.
Right.
They may not be able to afford that $5,000 within the next 5 years.
Yeah, that five may be a little high on the high end.
Okay, let's say 4,000.
Right.
I'll meet you in the middle. That's still $1,000 a year they have to set aside for when this plan goes to fruition.
Yes.
And I think that's tough on anybody on a fixed income.
Right. It would be probably about 5 years before we would get to that point.
I saw a presentation not terribly long ago on the Charlotte project, and they did something that I've never seen done before, to be honest with you. They gave the homeowners, and the homeowners had to sign off on doing this because you're on private property, the ability to have the contractor that was working for Charlotte County make those connections once the system is all hooked up. That way, they could finance the entire amount. So that those kinds of options are out there. They would obviously have to be, that would have to be a separate agreement between the homeowner and the city to make that happen, because they're working on private property on that side of it. The Charlotte presenter said that they had about in excess of 90% of the folks opted that direction. So it was an interesting approach to that particular issue. That is, it's always an issue, whether it's water alone or wastewater. That connection between the right-of-way line / property line and the house, whether it's water or wastewater, is always an issue.
I think I'm good for right now, Mayor.
Okay. When you were talking about the 365 and the Vice Mayor brought up, you know, the mandatory, or it was brought up even by Emmerich, the mandatory connections for the new properties. Would there be an essence, or does there need to be, or is it currently in the code, transition of title? Would that be a place where we would have to look at? That the transition of title would make mandatory?
That is true. That is the way when they sign an agreement to pay over time, they have to pay it if they sell the property. I think you're talking about we could let somebody kind of slide until the property transitions for sale, because I think
we let them slide. I was just trying to figure out where we're at with it, but go
right.
ahead. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, I mean, as I think some of you probably know, but average homeownership lasts about 7 years. So you're probably, not even talking to the people who would own the property at the time. But the state statute requires connection within 365 days of notice on the sewer side. So there really isn't much. Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of bound by that.
Yes, we are.
Once you do it. Okay. And then I like what you said concerning Charlotte County, because that was something I was going to ask about, was if we could utilize a city contract, say with a plumber. My Siri just kicked up. A city, not Siri, a city contract with a plumber to kind of jumble these in together to get a little better cost. And you kind of mentioned that using the existing contractor, possibly that might be some way to take a look at trying to alleviate some of the burden.
Certainly on the connection side, you obviously would be in a competitive bidding environment, and you would put that in there as an alternate bid to make those connections.
The opportunity to use whoever they wanted or whoever the city provided.
And you would think that the economy of scale of doing 200 of them instead of doing onesies would be a much better option for everybody. But
I think you'd cut a third or something off of the costs.
Right.
Okay. Commissioner or Vice Mayor?
Yeah. So I have extreme empathy for our citizens that are, one, contemplating building in this area, putting in a well and a septic, and then in 4 years, like Commissioner Luke alluded to, having to crush all that, do away with all that, and now paying another approximately $25,000 or $7,000. What about the people that just put in an RO system? That's not cheap. What if they just had to redo their septic system for whatever reason? That wasn't cheap. And now that lifespan of that equipment that they already invested in is going to have to be voided to hook up to this project within 3 years. Is there a way that we can absolve, for lack of another term, them hooking up?
I think that, I'll leave the state statute to the city attorney on it. One of the thoughts that has run through my mind multiple times on this thing from the early 90s when Cape Coral was going through the whole dual water system issue, because that same argument was made. That's an old argument, and it's always going to be an argument, and it's a legit argument. There's no question about that. Is that, and this becomes more of a policy decision on this side of it, and we'll, as I said, on the wastewater side in particular, let the city attorney determine the 365 thing. But you can run the lines, and you can have it available for everybody. You can make it voluntary, with the exception of those people that are the new construction, obviously would be mandatory. And then the part where it would cease to be voluntary is if their well went south and they have to replace their well, or their septic went south and they had to replace their septic. And then it becomes a mandatory connection to the system.
Transition to title, something
Correct.
like that.
That kind of gets around that. We're not going to collect the same dollars on those line extension fees so that the system would be less self-funding, if you will, on a going forward basis. But that's certainly a way to go down the path of getting the lines in the system without impacting the homeowners, especially those that are there today, immediately, or 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever the case may be. So that's a policy decision to me, not a engineering or if we were doing it with with other dollars that you know, the ratepayers were coming up with, that would be a different story from a utility standpoint. But since they're surtax dollars, it's a bit different from that financing side of it.
I had a couple citizens ask about, instead of financing it, to me, then that's a monthly bill. You have to pay X amount of dollars to pay back the amount financed every single month, is an assessment on their property taxes. Is that something that has been explored? Have you guys thought about that? Can it be done?
I've seen these done multiple different ways. There's been MSBUs set up, MSTUs in other places.
Speak English, please.
Oh. A taxing district or municipal benefit unit, MSTU, MSBU. Those, you know, they cost money to set those things up. I don't know if we could work with the tax assessor. I just don't know the answer from a mechanic standpoint on anything other than one of those types of structures. I don't know if we could just, if we call up tax assessor and say, we want $100 on each one of these properties, if that works or if that doesn't work. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well,
If I
they,
can
go ahead.
add to that, we do currently have Floribama and Sumter Garden are done as an assessment district. They paid for the entire cost of the project, and we split the amount up over all those property owners, and they do get it on their tax bill. But again, there is a cost to that. We pay every year to GSG to administer that for us, for the lines.
When you say all the property owners in that area, so we'll talk about the 223 parcels. Regardless if it's developed or undeveloped, they pay equally an assessment on their property taxes?
Yes, ma'am.
So that, because that goes to one of my other questions, is we have no guarantee these vacant parcels are ever going to hook up. They could stay vacant forever.
That's true.
And right now you have 135, that's almost $2.5 million. And they may never hook up. But the folks that are homeowners now who have already invested in our community are required to hook up. So we did the PACE program not too long ago, that if a citizen was to take advantage of the solar or anything, it could be assessed on their property taxes. Could we do something similar to that?
We would have to investigate it for the financing options.
Does anybody know what Floribama, just for the record, how much do they pay for their assessment? And it's only water, if I remember correctly, right?
Floribama is water and sewer. I'm gonna say it's $180 a month, but it was subsidized.
What does that mean, ma'am?
It.
I mean, I know what it means,
They
but
did not recover all of the costs to do that project for that particular area. It was supposed to have been done that way, and that was just the line. That did not include the plant capacity fees either.
so they had to pay those capacity fees separate?
Yes, ma'am. The capacity fees came through the utilities department, and the line extension fee, or the assessment, went through the tax assessor's office.
All right. And I'm going to say it, and I'll try to form it in a question, but the city doesn't appreciate the unfunded mandates from the state and the federal governments. I have a serious problem with a mandate to our citizens of this magnitude, and I know that we're doing it for green purposes now and in the future. We have got to figure a way to get these costs down. This is totally unaffordable. And I would like to see other options. If you have other options on how to get the costs down, please share them. Question mark.
Can you please share them?
Can you please share those?
I mean, if you just, I understand, I completely agree with you. Unfunded mandates are not pleasant at all. There are several communities in the state of Florida that are being mandated, not by their community, but by DEP, is coming in and telling them, you will do this now because of the situation that you're in. So it, like Mr. Acosta has said, it's not today, it may not be 10 years from now, maybe not even 20 years from now. But at some point in time, the proliferation of septic tanks will become an issue that will be addressed by another entity in our country.
Yeah, I think if we could look into a sewer inspection type of a program, I think would go very, very far. So,
Good.
I'm good.
Yeah, I don't know that costs are ever going to go down. I think they're just going to rise. However, I think finding a solid solution as to how we can diversify some of those costs, which are some of the things that we've been talking about up here, different ways that we can possibly do that to alleviate some of it coming to a head, Commissioner Luke.
To me, looking at the project planning, the various types, and I know we have gravity throughout it, and back in the day when it first started, that was the El Cheapo way to go. Why are we not looking at the vacuum sewer system?
It is one of the options, though. If there is an RFP after this meeting for an engineer, that engineer will be tasked to determine which is the better option, vacuum or gravity.
Because it sounds better to me.
It does to me too, but.
Yeah. So I wondered why, would we be able to do it in that section?
Mm-hmm.
So because we have gravity everywhere else, it doesn't prohibit us from doing
It does not.
vacuum? Because I actually like that system better. There's a lot going on at the state level. Is there any way that we could get subsidy or grants for any of these projects at this point in time? I know Senator Gruder had.
As I'm sure you all know, that the Springs projects have taken off to some extent. They may get a little more energy here, given what happened last summer and the new governor. But there is some DEP funding that's going into those septic to sewer projects around the Springs, up around Weeki Wachee and the middle of the state. I don't know where we would wind up on the priority list of that at the moment, but there is some of that funding coming, and my guess is that the legislature may throw a lot more money at it this session, but that's a wild guess on my part, just reading the tea leaves.
Also, as the last meeting, I was instructed to look for other sources of funding for the Warm Mineral Springs project. So I reached out to Leslie, who is our lobbyist for the city of Northport, and I've instructed her to look for ways for funding for the Warm Mineral Springs project, for water and for sewer, and also I've asked for help for any neighborhood expansion projects also. So that's already been sent to our lobbyist for review to help us try to receive some funding for projects such as this.
I appreciate that, Rick. Thank you for saying that. I have no problem with what we have in the code right now of if the lines are there when there's new construction to hook up. I do like one of the last things that Mike was talking about, kind of a hybrid type of way of implementing this throughout the city. I would lean more toward the hybrid instead of, I guess when the way I'm viewing it is when the program was put in place back in the day, there's a lot of things happened. And back in the day, it was a great program. But where we are currently, things have changed and we need to change with the time too. So I think this hybrid way, looking at different alternatives that can, the wood chip idea would probably be only $2,000 to $3,000 according to the consultant. And that's if it's failing. Again, why fix something that's not broken? But to set codes forward, to take care of something, if there's testing done and it is broken, it needs to be fixed, because that's when you run into the environmental problems. I have no problem with expanding our lines. We do have, 60,000 plots or something, or lots, And it is when that density is there that you have the problem with the nutrients in that. So yes, we have to look forward to the future, but I don't want to do it at the expense of those who have already invested within our community unless there's an issue with it. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 second. I want to recognize that Commissioner Carasone. She came in a few minutes ago, so she is now here with us. Glad to have you. Commissioner Image.
Looking at alternatives, we're looking at these numbers of what the cost is, and the wastewater was $13,000 and the water was $7,500. Now, let's say it was voluntary, it was down the road, and we had a resident that said, you know, I just got in a new well and a new RO system. Can I just do sewer? Because that's what I want to do, because my septic tank just broke. So instead of me coming out with $5,000, I can get on the city plan, and now I got a new sewer line. Is that possible?
Unfortunately, there's no way to meter sewer. So we bill sewer based on your water consumption.
Okay.
There's no way to, monitor that unless they are connected to the water system. What we have done in the past with the last project is we've offered them a credit if they've just done. It's like a kind of a scaled down credit. So if you just did it this year, you'd get one amount. If you did it 2 years ago, you'd get a little bit more of a credit off of what it would cost you. And so those figures are also built into our code as well. So if you just did your well like a year ago, you'd get $500 off. Or if you get, and I'm just picking these numbers, if you did it 2 years ago, you might get $400 off. 3 years ago, you might get $200. So that's the kind of program that we offered to the residents the last time.
Yeah, the main thing is if they happen to be in that situation, that they would have options moving forward.
Right, they would save them a little bit of money, in the upfront cost or in what we would finance for them.
Thank you.
Commissioner or Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I just have one question I forgot to ask earlier, and my apologies. On slide number 9, it says here from something about the surtax being used from fiscal year 18-19 through 21-22, that there's like $5.2 million available surtax or total surtax collected. Is that collected citywide, city manager? Is that the grand total?
That's the surtax that's in this project. If you add up the amounts up above,
Okay,
from
so
18 to 22, that's what's in the CIP for this project.
So it's only in the CIP for this particular project. It's not surtax collected entirely.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
We like utilities, but we're not giving them all of the surtax available.
Yeah, I was like, what about everything else we got to do, and why is it so
We'll fight for every dollar we can get, but
Thank you.
it would, yes. I mean, that's a policy issue, obviously, but it does help to offset the cost of the project.
I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think what we're looking to do is either move forward or not move forward. From what we've heard from, and I'll get to it just 1 second, what we've heard from staff is if we're not willing to make mandatory, we're not willing, what was the other one? If you're not willing to make mandatory and you're not willing to
Help fund it with the surtax.
help fund it with the surtax, staff believes that there's no point in even moving forward with it. So then we have to make those decisions. But before we do, let's take up some public comments.
Commissioner Carasone, have any
I
questions?
asked her, she said she was good for right now.
No, and as you know, we all had conversations with utilities, so all of my questions were answered prior to the meeting. So.
I'm going to call up the first 3. James Banks, Stange, and Michael Caruso.
First of all, this is my first time to come to your meeting, and I am really impressed. There's some people here that have really level heads. Ms. McDowell, thank you for inviting us. We wouldn't have known. The cost of $27,000.
For the record.
James Banks.
Thank you, sir.
The cost of this would be devastating. My wife and I moved here 3.5 years ago to Northport, although we've been here for 17 years. Like most people, we lost a fortune in the real estate market and the 401k and all these other things. So our savings for retirement is devastating. We have little. So our intention was to work till our early 70s, reverse the mortgage on our home like we've done for my mom and dad who are in their mid-80s, and then be able to live comfortably for the rest of our lives and enjoy what we do. I'm a musician. I play 300 shows a year. I'm not a rich guy. Most of these people in this neighborhood are either hardworking or retired. $27,000. I'd like to ask the people who are proposing this, would you put 20% of whatever your home value is and mandatorily made to pay that? It'd be impossible. I love some of the ideas. If you're new coming in here, it's a similar cost, then you have to hook up. And if your well goes bad, you should hook up to the water. If your septic goes bad, you should hook up to the sewer. That's a way to fix the problem without causing undue stress and on all the other people who are already here. It's obvious that the problem that we're claiming is going to exist in the future isn't here now. The way to alleviate that is to make the new people do it. Its cost is similar. And the people just to kind of come in gradually when their systems start going down and assist them so that they can have a life. Because if they attach my home for 20 grand, guess what? I can't get a reverse mortgage. I'm going to work until I drop. My wife's a 60-year-old carpenter. How many people want to hire her? Oh, that's right, 60. They see that number, they don't want to hire her. She's an amazing carpenter and a cabinet designer. Kitchen. She's working at Walmart. Walmart's paying her 1/3 of what she used to make. But we're getting by and we're happy to be in this community. But that kind of money would devastate us. And I hope you understand and take that in consideration when you go forward to make this so that people could stay in this neighborhood. Because if this is assessed to our home, how many people are going to come and purchase our home if we choose to sell it? No, there's 27 or 30 grand to go on top of it. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ingo? Mr. Stang here? Stange? No? Michael Caruso?
Hello, my name is Michael Caruso. There are a lot of retired people that are living here, and they can't afford to have this project done. Like my parents, they just had a new RO system just put in. Their well is working perfectly fine. I mean, I live on almost an acre lot, and I have no problem with my septic system, and I also have an RO system. There are many people that have RO systems that were just put in, anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000. I agree with going ahead with the times, but like you were saying, not mandatory having them hook up. When you have a system that fails, then sure, by all means, have them hook up the system. But when they have a perfectly working system, they shouldn't have to. I mean, maybe put something in where everybody has to have their septic system inspected every 6 months or a year to see if it's still working properly. But you can't mandatory tell somebody, you have to put this in. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Caruso? Oh, that was you. Sorry.
Yeah, that was me.
Thank you. Okay, I have David Duval, John Cruz, and I'm sorry, I can't read it. Ida
Dave Duval, citizen of North
Grooms.
As you can see, an issue brings people out. Last city meeting, I think there were about 2 of us here. There's 3 kinds of animals in the world. There's animals that protect the territory that they live in. So there's very few of those animals there, and they don't destroy the habitat. There are a second kind of animals that they graze over a territory. They're there, they eat the grass, whatever, they drink the water, then they move on to let the land restore. Then there's third type of animal, and that's human beings. And we waste everything we get near. Now,
digress.
Overall, I'm for this idea of having sewer system that's treated by the municipality, as I said, overall. I think this is just a beginning point for discussion, and the city should, have a standing committee, your Public Utilities Board, have them definitely work on something like this. The newer areas, like I'm just presuming the West Villages, every new home in West Villages goes on water and sewer. I'm just presuming. Any new area of the city where we have very few houses, okay, that's where we should focus on putting the lines in. Another opportunity would be putting high-speed fiber in. If you dig up the side of the street to put in a sewer line, to put in a water line, put in something that would benefit the city, to make a contract with Comcast or Verizon, whoever's running, okay, get them paid part of the cost. Another major point here, I saw a few things in the presentation that I just didn't agree with. I think a number of different issues. One, the difference between the gravity system and the vacuum system. Vacuum system may be a great thing, okay, but I know from experience that people who are involved in something are very involved, and they look at all these new and great, gadgets and things. Go back to Hurricane Katrina, when the city had all these huge pumps to pump out excess water. When the hurricane came and they all failed, the whole city was inundated with water. Can you imagine this vacuum system failing and the whole city's inundated with our waste? There's a possibility here of, if we have to do something, the people that are going to benefit are going to be the people in the whole city. So maybe if you're going to do this, don't put it on the 88 people that have homes here now. Consider a tax for the whole city to be paid out over a number of years, and you can save some of that money that you're not using right away and get interest on it and thereby lower your costs. So many different ways of doing it, but this is a starting point, but not an end point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Duval. John Cruz?
Good morning, my name is John Cruz. I would like to use most of my time over here because most of my questions have been answered, especially by the board and also by my neighbor over there, fantastic person. So the only thing I would like to say is that everyone here should be given a chance and more options should be presented, especially the options, okay? So at this time, again, I would like to yield, and I'd like to listen to the rest of the neighbors over here because it's all very important to us. And I hope that the board will make the right decisions from this point.
Thank you, Mr. Crooms. I'm so sorry, I can't read the first name. Ida Grooms? Oh, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ida Grooms. We bought our house in 2005. Whatever money we had, we put it in our house. We did everything that we thought was right. I'm going to be 74 next month. I can't go out and make $30,000 between now and 5 years from now. There's no way. Maybe if I go back to New York, I might have a better chance. But I came to Florida because it was hot, and I needed warm weather because of health reasons. So I can't pick up and go out and find a job to make $30,000 on top of the additional $5,000 to just connect. I can't do that. So where do I go from here? Do I start pinching my pennies for the next 4 years until you say, hey, you got to hook up? I should have options. My husband should have options. It's just the two of us. We only have each other to count on. We're not going anywhere. We're both retired. What do? Sell our house and go into assisted living? Can't afford that. Nobody's going to come and see us. Nobody's even going to check on us. So I think consideration should be given to the people that have built this community and made it what it is today. That's why we're here. My neighbors and I, we've talked about this. We like our area. But $30,000, It's not gonna come up in 5 years. There's no way. You have to give up something. What do? Give up food or medical? Those prices are going up. They're not going down. So I think and I appreciate all your comments, and I really think you two ladies have been the greatest. I appreciate the time you took to just keep us informed. This is our first time coming, and I'd really like to hear some comments from the other people that are here, because I'm pretty sure they're out there, they're much more, they have more information to offer than we do. We're basically home. We do a lot of work in the yard and projects, but I think that should be taken in consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Grooms, when you come up here, you shouldn't lie to the commission. There's no way you're 74 years old.
I'm gonna be 74.
She looks great.
Thank you.
My husband is 77.
Both of you look
Both
great.
of you guys. Thank you very much. Okay. Just to kind of, I just want to put out there, because we do hear quite a bit that we've got to build out this infrastructure, we have to do something. And I just want everybody to know that the cost, being one of the largest cities in the state, I mean, we're not talking just millions. We're talking upwards towards $1 billion.
To do it all, $3
$3 billion, there you go. $3 billion to build out the infrastructure within this city. I wish to God that we were established a little bit differently than we were.
Exactly.
But we're not. So we'll make the best of what we can. And I do hope and I do believe that this commission is going to work towards making lives better within our community, getting this infrastructure out there the best that we can in a very out-of-the-box thinking sort of way. I think it's going to be naive to think that there's not going to be any cost to any citizen. However, we do want to find a way that is going to be least egregious to the pocketbooks of our citizens. So, thank you, staff. Thank you, citizens, for the comments. I have no other comment cards, Vice Mayor, so I'm going to move this to Vice Mayor McDowell.
Well, at this point, we have to make a motion, and I think from hearing everybody on this board, it looks like we need a lot more information before we can make a motion to either proceed or not proceed. Because if the choices are, yes, we are going to give authorization to proceed as presented, or no, we are not, then everything, it either dies or goes forward. And I think there's a middle ground, and we need more information to be able to find out what is the best way to proceed. Obviously, something needs to be done. I don't know. I'm concerned about the cost. That is the number one factor, and somebody has to pay for it. And the people using it are going to be the ones that have that burden. And I think we have to find a way to make it least expensive. And I know staff wants a mandatory hookup, and I get that, the reasons behind it. You're putting out all this money, and if nobody hooks up, then the city loses all that money. But at the same time, the citizens can't afford it either. So if I could, I will try a motion and see where it goes.
Can I speak before you make
Sure.
the motion? Is that all right, Mayor? The surtax, we need to do something to our infrastructure. So utilizing surtax for utilities, to me, is a no-brainer. You have to. Making mandatory hookup to existing residents, no, I'm not for that. But the surtax aspect of it, again, I stated earlier, I'd like to see more lines going to the commercial areas, inviting the businesses to, have another reason to come. I see that as being positive. So surtax going there, I have no problem with. Thank you.
Commissioner Carson?
I agree. I think that our concentration should be the expansion of our commercial areas, and then make that a mandatory hookup when new people and new commercial come in. I would love to see the septic inspection, but not annually, and then I say that, but what's the cost of that? Because we don't want septic inspection to become an annual thing, and then that becomes $1,000 every year, and that too will be a huge impact. So I need to see a little bit more of that, but I am essentially in support. The other thing is that I think we need these fees defined and broken down. I don't understand how an abandoned well will take $500. I don't understand how capacity fees on each side cost $2,000. I don't understand how the line extension itself is $3,500. So, you know, we have all these numbers, but I want to know, I want them broken down. How is it that the abandoned septic is $600? Where is that money going to? What's the real amount of money it costs? And honestly, I agree with everyone. $21,000 is a heck of an impact. And some of these people, those who bought it in 2005, 2004, that's how much they paid for their house. You know, that's nuts. So, and I get, you know, it is what it is. That's how much things cost these days. But I still believe that we would do justice to the city if we truly concentrated on those areas that are not built. And then go with the other ideas as far as if the well or septic fails, then make it mandatory. So, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
So I will try a motion. And if I forget anything in my list, I would hope that my fellow commissioners would make an amendment. So based on the conversation, not only that we had and staff presented and the citizens' input, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we instruct that we instruct the city manager to bring back more information. And that information would include the Commissioner Luke's idea about wood chips. I have no clue what that's about, but it's something that we need to look at. We need to bring back information about starting an septic inspection program. Say that fast 3 times. We need to define the fees and the costs that were associated and talked about in this presentation. We need to find out about grant funding, and I would hope that that would include any potential legislation that's coming before the state. We also need to look at ways of financing options, whether it be assessments or monthly payments. And my last one is some kind of a hybrid so that the citizens, and I'm going to explain this, so that citizens, if they've just replaced their well or they just replaced their septic, that when something fails and they need to fix that issue, that they would then be required to be mandated to hook up. And of course, anybody that's got vacant property would be required to hook up at time of build-up. So I think I captured everything. If anybody else has.
I would just ask that you add that maybe like transfer title, something like that too. So maybe,
Transfer title?
Yeah, like, you know, like when a sale takes place.
Okay. That they are required to hook up?
That would be a mandatory spot.
So if I sell my house,
Then it would go with.
then it would go mandatory?
With the title.
That's going to affect the sale of your house, I'm telling you right now.
I think so.
Absolutely, but.
20-something thousand to it.
Well.
Think about it.
Well, it'll affect but I mean, it'll be the market standard then. So people just won't move to Northport, or they'll.
Well, we can have them bring back the information, because this is just information.
It's just for information.
Excellent. So I'll also add Mayor's idea of a transfer of title that they be required to hook up.
Second.
So this is just information. Thank you.
All right, I have a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Anything to that, Vice Mayor?
I just want to see City Manager, I know it's a long, lengthy list. Is it clear what we're looking for?
Yes, ma'am.
So all of these items, I'm counting 2, 4, 6, there's like 10 items. And then we'll have a workshop. So if somebody wants to make an amendment, since it's already been seconded, to have it as a workshop.
Why a workshop?
So that there's 10 different things that we're going to be talking about.
I don't see how it could be an agenda item
Yeah.
anyhow. I mean, because this is just information to come back.
I have a motion on the floor. If I have an amendment, I'll entertain
I
it.
don't know
If not, we'll move on with the motion. Okay?
There's
Yep.
seconder. There are, I mean, these options of looking at it, I think are great and are really good because it's making us think outside of the box and then update the project and the system that we implemented years ago, trying to get it more real for this time. I have just in the last 2 weeks or so turned over a couple of people who want to hook up to city water and sewer. They've got it on one street and then the other street next to them. So, you know, we need to focus some of those monies in helping those people who want it, who desire it too. Thank you.
Can I make an amendment to my own motion?
I have no problem with it.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to make an amendment to include looking at, wait, I forgot one that Commissioner Carrasone had talked about very briefly. Looking at options for commercial hookup in various locations in commercial. Vanessa?
Yeah, to look at.
Running the lines, not a hookup, but running the lines, because it's already, they have to, I believe it's state, they have to hook into,
Right.
you know, municipality utilities. So it's running the lines, and we've got some lines that go, you know, to the one side of Toledo Blade, but it's not on the other. And if we really want to see commercial go to those types of corridors, I know we have permitting that helps it, but you may have, you know, better, even the hospitals out that direction. And so having, I mean, on Sumter, the potential property is out there. So taking it out those ways might encourage some businesses to come to those intersections and corridors. Thank you.
Did somebody second my amendment? I think.
Oh, yeah, no, we need a second for the
Commissioner
amendment.
Carrasone was.
So I have an amendment on the floor by Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Carrasone. Vice Mayor, do you have anything to the amendment?
Just want to explore commercial opportunities using the best bang for our buck.
Commissioner Carrasone?
And I think that we also need to look at, once we do those expansions to the commercial areas, you're also allowing for those undeveloped residential areas that hook up line. And so it would all fall in place. I think we need to look more towards the future, else we're just going to be here in another 30 years. So.
Okay. So I have a motion on the floor with the amendment. Can we take the vote? That passes unanimously. On to the motion. Yep. That passes unanimously. All right, so we're done with that topic for now. And just so the public knows, that's going to bring back all that information. We didn't vote on anything specific, just trying to get more stuff so we can make a better educated decision. All right, moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment for
I
that?
have nothing further, Mayor.
Okay, Commission Communications. Commissioner.
I just want to apologize for not getting here on time. I don't know
Some of
if
that's my fault.
you said that. Well,
no, I'm
not
just saying-
really.
I'm just teasing. I knew
Just
you.
what- yeah.
I knew you'd ask my wife.
Yeah, I did. I asked
She wasn't able
Melinda,
to.
but we had a major tragedy in our family.
I saw
So I have babies in the back here, so that's why we were late.
Well, well, we're keeping your family in our thoughts and prayers.
Need it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Luke, do you have anything for Commission Communication?
This is just a short, I mean, it's not the full expansion of the septic tanks that are in our city, all those red dots.
There's mine.
You saw your septic tank, did you? So it is something that we need to look at forward, going forward in our city. That's it.
Commissioner, or Vice Mayor McDowell?
Yeah, I just want to thank the citizens for coming out and taking the time out of your morning to hear about this project and learn a little bit more. I think that out of all 5 commissioners, I think there's 3 of them that are on septic and sewer. So myself being one, I can put myself in your shoes. And yes, it would be extremely costly for me to do something. So stay tuned for a workshop or a commission meeting where we'll bring back that additional information and have that available for you guys too.
Can I add to that? I live in one of the older sections where I have both water and sewer, but that's before the city expanded. I mean, and they put the infrastructure in that smaller area of where the city was new, and exactly what you were talking about. I mean, we expanded without expanding our infrastructure, and that's how this city did it then. So we're now trying to take care of that.
It's a tough road to hoe, but we'll get there. Commissioner Garrison, you have anything? Commissioner
No, I read.
Oh. Commissioner Image?
No, I'm good.
Okay. City Manager?
I'm good, thank you.
City Attorney?
No, sir.
You sure?
Yes, sir.
I'll give you one more shot. Yeah? Okay. We have no city clerk here, so, all right, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.